Lapland Friends, an adventure in Sweden. Sweden at last! Huey shouted gleefully. This will be a great vacation, added Louie. Grandma Duck says we'll be able to ski every day near Uncle Sven and Aunt Gerta's house. The boys hurried off the plane at Arlanda Airport in Stockholm and ran to greet the elderly couple waiting at the bottom of the ramp. Such big boys, said Aunt Gerta as she hugged the nephews. We can't wait to get to your house, said Louie. We had some time before our train leaves before north, said Uncle Sven. We thought you boys might enjoy seeing Stockholm. That sounds great, said Dewey. Uncle Sven and Aunt Gerta took the three boys to the dock, and everyone climbed aboard a sightseeing boat. The city of Stockholm is made up of 14 small islands, explained Uncle Sven. All the islands are connected by bridges, so people can travel by car and train. Look over there, said Huey, pointing to a magnificent building. That's the royal palace, said Aunt Gerta. This is where the King of Sweden works. It is also used for important meetings. After the boat ride was over, Uncle Sven and Aunt Gerta led the boys to Central Station to catch their train. They settled in their seats, and the train began to move. The city of Stockholm spread out beyond the windows. The sight of flowers and green grass worried Louie. It doesn't look like we'll be able to ski, he said sadly. Oh, yes, you will, said Aunt Gerta. Up north there's snow until late spring and even summer. Sweden is a very large country, explained Uncle Sven. The weather here in the south of Sweden is very different from the weather where we live in the north. You boys have had a long trip, said Aunt Gerta. Now it's time to get some rest. We still have quite a way to go. The train finally stopped in a little snow-covered town. Hello, said a man with a booming voice. Now tell me, who is Huey, who is Louie, and who is Dewey? Uncle Sven and Aunt Gerta introduced their friend Carl to the boys. Carl had brought his snowmobile bus to take them all to Uncle Sven's and Aunt Gerta's house outside of town. They climbed into the snow bus and drove off. What kind of sign is that? Asked Huey. That is a moose crossing sign, said Carl. You'll see plenty of moose around here. And also reindeer, added Aunt Gerta. We are in Lapland now, and many Laps herd reindeer. Sure enough, a few minutes later, they saw a herd of reindeer crossing the road. I didn't know we were in Lapland, said Dewey in a puzzled voice. I thought we were in Sweden. Carl stopped the snow bus by a young boy who was tending the reindeer. I'd like you to meet Lanuk, said Carl. He is a Lap, and he can tell you all about Lapland. The northern part of Sweden is called Lapland, explained Lanuk. Lapland also stretches across the northern parts of Norway and Finland and even a small part of the Soviet Union. Just then, an old reindeer left the herd and came to nuzzle Lanuk's neck. Some of our reindeer are more like pets, he said, laughing. My father gave me this reindeer when I was 3 years old. His name is Whitehorn. He seems really nice, said Louie. I never knew anyone who had a reindeer for a pet before. Whitehorn is a wonderful pet, agreed Lanuk. They all waved goodbye to Lanuk and drove on. Carl dropped them off at a little cottage at the top of the mountain. The boys walked inside the house. That's the biggest stove I've ever seen, said Huey when he entered the kitchen. It's a wood-burning stove, said Aunt Gerta. Uncle Sven and I are the town bakers, so that stove gets plenty of use. The next morning, the boys had some delicious bread that Uncle Sven and Aunt Gerta had made. Then they helped Uncle Sven load up the toboggan with boxes of bread and cakes to take down to the village. The boys skied, and Sven walked on snowshoes while pulling the toboggan. Why don't you get a snow bus like Carl's to make your deliveries, Uncle Sven? Asked Dewey. Snow buses cost a lot of money, said Uncle Sven. Besides, I'm getting old, and I'm not used to things that move so fast. They had finished the last delivery when they met Lanuk. He was looking at a blouse in the store window. I've been saving my money to buy that for my mother's birthday, Lanuk explained. Then he turned to the boys. I was wondering if you'd like to come home with me and meet my family, said Lanuk. Uncle Sven agreed to let the boys go, and they headed off for Lanuk's settlement. Lanuk brought the boys to his hut and introduced them to his mother. She was making a coat. Laps can make almost anything, Lanuk said proudly. We make boots, blankets, and even jewelry. He showed the boys a bracelet decorated with thin threads of tin. Laps are famous for this kind of jewelry, added Lanuk's mother. Lanuk led the boys outside to show them the rest of the settlement. He told them about the Lap way of life. Some Laps travel or migrate with the reindeer herds, he explained. Other Laps are farmers, lawyers, or professors, and they live in one place only. But my family still follows the reindeer. Lanuk explained how reindeer dig under the snow to get at the moss growing there. When the moss is gone, the herd must move on, Lanuk said. Just then, Lanuk's father came speeding along a snowmobile. Time for dinner, he said, and the 4 boys hopped aboard. The snowmobile ride was even more fun than the snow bus. In no time at all, they were back at Lanuk's hut. They all sat down on rugs before a low table. Lanuk's baby sister lay in a splendid cradle that Lanuk and his father had made for her. And my mother made the rugs we're sitting on, said Lanuk. His mother nodded. My grandmother taught me how to make rugs, clothing, and many other things, she said. After dinner, the 3 boys returned to Uncle Sven and Aunt Gerta's house. There they found Uncle Sven asleep in a chair. Every time he takes the bread into town, he comes home exhausted, said Aunt Gerta in a worried voice. I wish there were an easier way to make our deliveries. When the boys went to bed that night, they tried to think of a way to help Uncle Sven and Aunt Gerta. Maybe Lanuk knows a good way to make the deliveries, said Huey. Let's ask him tomorrow, agreed Dewey. When they arrived at the Lap settlement the next morning, most of the Laps had packed their belongings. We're supposed to leave today on the migration, said Lanuk's father, but we could not find Lanuk. We'll help you look for him, said Dewey. Thinking that Lanuk might have gone to buy his mother the blouse, the boys went to the village store, but Lanuk was not there. The boys went to the snow-covered pasture where they had first met Lanuk, but the field was empty. Then Huey saw something in the distance. There's some smoke, he exclaimed. Maybe Lanuk is over there. The boys ran to the woods, where they found Lanuk crouched over a small fire keeping warm. Whitehorn was beside him. Lanuk, cried Dewey, we've been looking all over for you. You have to go home to begin the migration. I'm not going, declared Lanuk. My father told me to leave Whitehorn behind because he's too old and slow and can't keep up with the herd. But I won't do it. Whitehorn and I will stay here by ourselves. I don't think your family will like that, said Louie. I won't leave Whitehorn here by himself, said Lanuk in a determined voice. Suddenly, Huey had an idea. Suppose we buy Whitehorn from you, he said to Lanuk. We can give Whitehorn to our aunt and uncle, and he can help them pull their toboggans into town, and then you'd have enough money to buy your mother that blouse. Best of all, Whitehorn will still be here when you get back in the fall, added Dewey. Lanuk grinned and hugged Whitehorn. That sounds like a wonderful idea, he said. You are very kind to help me, said Lanuk. I hope you will come back and visit Lapland again some day. Sure, said the 3 boys. They said goodbye to Lanuk and went back to the house. The elderly couple couldn't believe their eyes when they saw Whitehorn. This is a wonderful gift, said Uncle Sven. With Whitehorn to pull the toboggan, I won't have any trouble making our deliveries. When it was time for the boys to leave, Whitehorn nuzzled them the way he had nuzzled Lanuk. We've had some really great times in Sweden, said Louie. And we've made some good friends, said Huey. That's right, said Dewey, and one of them even has antlers. Did you know? Every country has many different customs and places that make it special. Some of the things that make Sweden special are mentioned below. Do you recognize any of them from the story? The part of Sweden that lies inside the Arctic Circle is known as the Land of the Midnight Sun. Here during the day, part of summer, the sun never sets. People let down heavy blinds so that over their windows so at night they can sleep. Stockholm, Sweden's capital city, is built on 14 islands that are linked by 50 bridges. Many Swedish people own pleasure boats, and they use them for vacationing and visiting friends. The Laps, who call themselves Samis, live on land inside the Arctic Circle that is owned by several countries, including Sweden. They are among the smallest peoples in the world. Although Laps average only 5 feet in height, they are very strong. Laps wear colorful traditional costumes, including the cap of 4 winds. It has 4 floppy points and bright streamers that flutter in the wind. Kiruna, Swedish Lapland's only city, is the largest city in the world, at least in area. The city has 3 times more land than the state of Rhode Island, but less than 30,000 people live there. Sweden is a land of great natural beauty. Half the country is covered with green forests, and there are thousands of lakes. Most Swedes spend their summer vacations at cottages on lakes or near the sea. Cross-country skiing is a national sport in Sweden. In the most famous cross-country race, skiers from all around the world race a long distance between 2 small towns. Like many European countries, Sweden has a royal family. Their king and queen of Sweden live with their children in a palace on an island outside of Stockholm. Early Swedish warriors, called Vikings, sailed the sea and explored new lands. Some Swede Vikings sailed as far as North America hundreds of years before Columbus. Bread is an important food in Sweden. In early times, bread was baked only once a year and then stored on poles strung along the ceilings. Many Lapps speak Swedish as well as their native Samoa language. Swedish and English are related languages with many words similar. Can you tell what these Swedish words mean? Mater, fader, syster, and brother.